The rain fell in thin, icy sheets, coating the stone driveway of the Whitmore estate with a dull, silver sheen. From a distance, the mansion looked like a dark, sleeping beast, its windows glowing faintly through the mist. Inside, tension clung to the air heavier than the dampness outside. Eleanor Whitmore stood in the drawing room, her fingers wrapped tightly around a porcelain teacup she hadn't taken a sip from. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, mocking her anxiety. The lawyer was late. Across from her, her brother Henry paced near the fireplace, his sharp features illuminated by the flickering flames. "Do you think he changed the will again?" Henry asked without looking at her. Eleanor didn't answer right away. She had been asking herself the same question ever since their father's sudden death last week. Charles Whitmore, patriarch of the family and owner of a vast shipping empire, had been a man of unpredictable moods. He could lavish affection on one child and freeze out the other without warning. Changing the will had been one of his favorite games. "I don't know," she finally said. "But if he did, it will be to punish someone." Henry stopped pacing and turned toward her, a smirk forming on his lips. "Maybe you." Before Eleanor could reply, the sound of tires crunching on gravel echoed from outside. Moments later, the front door opened and footsteps approached. Mr. Collins, the family lawyer, stepped into the room. His coat was soaked, his spectacles fogged. "Thank you for waiting," he said, shaking the water from his hat. "This will not take long, though I fear it may not be pleasant." Henry's smirk faded. Eleanor's grip on her teacup tightened. Collins pulled a sealed envelope from his briefcase and broke the wax seal. "Your father's final wishes are clear," he began, unfolding the paper. "The Whitmore estate, the shipping company, and the bulk of his fortune will go to—" A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and Collins paused. He adjusted his glasses and continued. "To Miss Margaret Hall." The room went silent. Eleanor blinked. "Who?" Henry's voice was sharp. "That's not funny, Collins. Who the hell is Margaret Hall?" Collins sighed. "Your father left a note explaining. Miss Hawley is his daughter, born out of wedlock 32 years ago." Eleanor felt her blood drain from her face. A half-sister, a stranger. And now, the owner of everything. Henry erupted. "This is insane. He can't do that." "He could," Collins said evenly. "And he did." Eleanor set her teacup down carefully, though her hands were trembling. "Where is she?" "She's arriving tomorrow," Collins replied. "Your father insisted she stay here until the legal transfer is complete." The thought of a stranger living under their roof, sleeping in the rooms they'd grown up in, was almost unbearable. Eleanor exchanged a look with Henry. For once, they shared the same thought. Margaret Hawley could not be allowed to take everything. But Eleanor's mind was already spinning with questions. Why had their father never mentioned her? How had this woman suddenly appeared in the will? And most importantly, what did she know? That night, Eleanor stood at her bedroom window, watching the rain. Somewhere beyond the mist, Margaret Hawley was making her way toward the Whitmore estate. And Eleanor had the sinking feeling that she was bringing more than just a legal claim. She was bringing secrets, secrets that could destroy them all. The next morning, the rain had softened to a cold drizzle, but the Whitmore estate remained, shrouded in a heavy gray mist. Eleanor awoke before dawn, unable to sleep, her mind replaying the lawyer's words over and over. Margaret Hall, half-sister, heiress, intruder, downstairs. She found Henry already in the dining room, a half-empty glass of brandy in front of him despite the early hour. His eyes were bloodshot. "She's arriving today," he said, as if Eleanor needed reminding. "I know," she replied flatly. They sat in tense silence until the sound of wheels crunching on gravel broke the stillness. Eleanor glanced toward the window. A dark carriage was emerging from the mist. Henry stood, his jaw tight. "Let's meet our dear sister." The front door creaked open, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Hensley, ushered in a tall woman in a dark traveling cloak. Her hood was pulled low, but as she stepped inside, she lowered it, revealing striking features, high cheekbones, sharp eyes of an icy gray, and dark hair pinned neatly beneath her hat. "Miss Howell," Mrs. Hensley said, her voice trembling slightly. Margaret offered a polite smile. "Thank you. It's been a long journey." Her voice was calm, but there was a quiet confidence in her tone, as if she were already comfortable in her surroundings. Eleanor forced a smile and stepped forward. "Eleanor Whitmore, this is my brother, Henry." Margaret's gaze flickered over them both. I know who you are." Henry bristled. "Do you?" Before Margaret could answer, Mr. Collins appeared in the doorway. "Good, you've arrived. We have much to discuss." They moved to the drawing room. Margaret removed her gloves with deliberate slowness, her eyes wandering over the portraits on the walls. She stopped at a painting of Charles Whitmore in his younger years. "He looks exactly the same as he did the day I met him," she murmured. Eleanor stiffened. "You knew him?" Margaret's eyes shifted to hers. "Of course. Didn't he tell you?" The silence was telling. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "We will begin the transfer of ownership in 2 days. In the meantime, Miss Halley will stay here as your father instructed." Henry shot Eleanor a look. 2 days. That was all the time they had to find a way to stop her. Later that evening, Eleanor passed by the study and noticed the door slightly ajar. Inside, Margaret sat at their father's desk, leafing through an old leather-bound journal. "That's private," Eleanor said sharply. Stepping into the room, Margaret looked up, unfazed. "It belonged to my father. That makes it mine now, doesn't it?" Eleanor walked closer. "What are you looking for?" Margaret closed the journal slowly. "Answers." "To what?" Margaret's expression hardened. "To why he left me. To grow up in poverty while you lived in all this." She gestured toward the shelves of books, the carved desk, the roaring fireplace. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Maybe because you were never supposed to be part of this family." Margaret's lips curved into a faint smile. "Oh, I was always part of this family, whether you like it or not." Before Eleanor could reply, Henry's voice called from the hall. "Eleanor, come quickly." She hurried out, finding Henry in the corridor, holding a crumpled letter. "This was in Father's safe," he whispered. Eleanor took the letter and read. Her father's handwriting was unmistakable. The letter was addressed to Margaret, but had never been sent. It spoke of regret, of promises broken, and most chillingly, it hinted at a truth the others must never know. Eleanor and Henry exchanged a glance. That truth, whatever it was, could be the key to getting rid of Margaret. Or it could destroy them all. And somewhere in the shadows of the corridor, unseen, Margaret stood listening. Night fell quickly over the Whitmore estate, the mist thickening until it seemed the mansion floated in a sea of gray. The corridors were dim, lit only by the flicker of wall sconces, their flames dancing in the drafts that slipped through the old stone walls. Margaret had been given the blue guest room at the east wing, far from Eleanor's chambers, but Eleanor suspected she wouldn't stay there long. That night, unable to rest, Eleanor walked past the door and saw light spilling from underneath. Curiosity tugged at her. She paused, listening. Inside, Margaret's voice was low, speaking to someone. "I told you I'd find it," she murmured. "The journal confirms everything." Eleanor's pulse quickened. There was a faint rustle, papers being folded, a drawer closing, and then silence. The door opened suddenly, and Margaret stepped out, startled but composed when she saw Eleanor. "Can't sleep either?" Margaret asked smoothly. "Not with strangers prowling the house," Eleanor replied coldly. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sleep well, sister." She walked away, the sound of her heels fading into the darkness. The next morning, Henry found Eleanor in the conservatory. "We can't let her stay another day," he said. "If she knows something, it could ruin us." "She does know something," Eleanor whispered. "I heard her last night. She has Father's journal." Henry's expression darkened. "Then we take it." That evening, while the household dined, Henry slipped into Margaret's room. The journal was gone. Instead, in the desk drawer, he found a sealed envelope addressed to Solicitor James Harrow. Inside was a single sheet of paper half burned, bearing only a line in their father's hand. "The night in Dover was no accident." Henry's breath caught. Dover. The name was rarely spoken in their home. 15 years ago, their mother had nearly drowned there, under circumstances the servants whispered about for months. Henry hid the letter in his coat and returned to the dining room, his mind spinning. Later that night, Eleanor confronted Margaret. In the library. "What do you want from us?" she demanded. Margaret closed the book she'd been reading. "Justice. For what?" Margaret stepped closer, her voice low. "For the lies. For the truth you've all buried. And for my mother." Eleanor blinked. "Your mother?" "She died because of this family," Margaret said, her eyes burning with restrained fury. "And I'm going to make sure everyone knows why." Before Eleanor could respond, the library door creaked open. Henry stepped in, pale as chalk. "Margaret, what exactly do you know about Dover?" Margaret tilted her head, studying him. Enough to know you were there. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eleanor turned to Henry, her heart pounding. You were in Dover that night? Henry's jaw tightened. It's not what you think. Margaret smiled faintly, as though she had just confirmed a long suspicion. Oh, I think it's exactly what I think. Somewhere in the mansion, a clock struck midnight. A storm rolled in from the coast that night, the wind lashing against the windows like impatient fists. The old mansion groaned, as though it remembered other storms, other nights when secrets threatened to tear it apart. Eleanor couldn't shake Margaret's words from her mind. She died because of this family. The accusation had lodged itself deep, gnawing at her composure. She found Henry in the study, staring into the fire, the half-burned Dover letter on the desk before him. You were there that night, Eleanor said quietly. Henry didn't look at her. Yes. She waited, but he didn't continue. And he finally turned, his eyes hollow. Mother wasn't alone on the cliff. Father was there. And so was Margaret's mother. Eleanor felt the room tilt. What? It was supposed to be a meeting, a settlement of some kind. Margaret's mother had threatened to tell the truth about Father's affair unless he gave her money. Mother found out and confronted them both. The fire popped loudly, making Eleanor flinch. Henry's voice lowered. The argument got heated. I was a boy, but I remember the shouting, the way Mother's voice cracked. And then, he swallowed hard. She fell. Eleanor's hands trembled. She fell or was pushed? Henry looked away. I don't know, but Father told me to forget what I saw. He said it was an accident, and that speaking of it would destroy us. Before Eleanor could reply, the study door opened and Margaret stepped in, rain glistening on her cloak. So you finally told her. Eleanor spun around. You knew? Margaret nodded. I knew the night my mother died. She came home soaked to the bone, shaking, saying she'd seen something on the cliffs she shouldn't have. She never spoke of it again, but I found her journal years later. Henry stood. Why come here now? Margaret's gaze was steady. Because the man who killed my mother's happiness, and perhaps your mother's life, is the same man who built this empire. And you both inherited the rock along with the wealth. A crack of thunder rattled the windows. Eleanor took a step forward. What do you want? Margaret's lips curved into a cold smile. The truth made public, the fortune divided fairly, and my father's name stripped from the nobility register. Henry laughed bitterly. You'll ruin us. Margaret's eyes didn't waver. You were already ruined. I'm just making it visible. Before another word could be spoken, a loud bang echoed through the hallway. Mrs. Hensley burst in, her face pale. Mr. Collins, he's dead. They rushed to the front hall. The lawyer's body lay crumpled at the bottom of the staircase, his neck twisted unnaturally. A dark stain spread on the carpet beneath his head. Margaret knelt beside him, her expression unreadable. He knew something, she murmured. Something worth killing for. Eleanor looked at Henry, her mind spinning. If Collins's death wasn't an accident, then someone in the house had silenced him. And that meant the most dangerous secret of all hadn't yet come to light. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, 3 Whitmores by blood or by scandal stood, staring at one another, each wondering who would survive the night.